Did you know one of the ancient world's most legendary wonders was a giant statue of the Greek sun god Helios? Welcome to Rhodes, Greece, where the Colossus of Rhodes once stood tall. A breathtaking monument that captured the spirit of an entire island. If you've been enjoying these history videos, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. The Colossus of Rhodes was erected in 280 BCE in the city of Rhodes, located on the Greek island of the same name. It wasn't just any statue. It was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. This colossal statue represented Helios, the sun god, who was believed to protect the island and its people, standing around 33 meters tall. That's roughly the height of a modern 10-story building. It was an awe-inspiring symbol of strength and victory. Standing at the harbor of Rhodes, the Colossus was a beacon of hope, pride, divine protection, welcoming sailors as they entered the city. In 305 BC, Antigonus I Monophthalmus, powerful ruler in the crumbling remains of Alexander the Great's empire, sent his son, Demetrius I of Macedon, to invade Rhodes. His goal? To force Rhodes to break its alliance with Ptolemy I of Egypt, a rival Hellenistic ruler. Demetrius brought with him an enormous army, equipped with the most advanced siege weapons of the time, including massive towers and battering rams. The island of Rhodes was under siege. Outnumbered and surrounded, the Rhodians could have surrendered. But they didn't. The Rhodians refused to lose hope. They fought bravely and smartly. They weren't alone. They reached out to their ally Ptolemy, the first of Egypt, who responded with military support. As Demetrius continued to press the siege, Ptolemy's warships sailed into Rhodes harbor ready to defend the city. By 304 BC, the tide had turned. With Egyptian reinforcements on the horizon and no end to the fighting in sight, Demetrius abandoned the siege and withdrew. He abandoned his entire arsenal of siege equipment and weaponry. For Rhodes, this wasn't just leftover junk. It was treasure. The Rhodians saw an opportunity. They sold the abandoned military gear for a whopping 300 talents, a massive fortune in ancient Greek currency. To put that in perspective, 1 talent could pay a skilled worker for 9 years. So 300. That was the equivalent of a small kingdom's fortune. And they put that money to use, not for war, but for art and pride. They commissioned a giant bronze statue of their patron god Helios, crafted from the very metal that once threatened their city. And so, to mark that hard-fought victory, the Rhodians decided to immortalize their triumph. The Rhodians built the Colossus of Rhodes to celebrate their survival and victory against Demetrius and Antigonus. But the Colossus wasn't just about military triumph. It was a symbol of unity, pride, strength, and the divine protection that the people of Rhodes believed had saved them. It stood not just for the Rhodians, but for what humanity can accomplish when it refuses to be conquered. That statue would become known as the Colossus of Rhodes, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Construction of this colossal statue was left to Chares of Lindos, a Rhodian sculptor who had been involved with large-scale statues before. Chares learned about statues under the tutelage of the great sculptor Lysippos, official sculptor of Alexander the Great. Lysippos, sculptor of emperors, athlete gods, and mythic heroes, was known for pushing the limits of scale and realism in bronze. Lysippos was known for his construction of a 22-meter-higher, 72-foot-tall bronze statue of Zeus at Tarentum, a coastal city in what is now modern-day Italy. Lysippos wasn't just a sculptor. He was a pioneer of proportion, anatomy, and drama. His Zeus at Tarentum wasn't just the tallest statue of its time. It was a glimpse into a world where gods walked tall among men. Under Lysippos, Chares absorbed a lifetime's worth of technique, scale, and vision. But nothing could prepare him for what lay ahead. The challenge of building a statue so enormous, it would dominate the harbor of Rhodes and the imagination of the world for centuries. Chares got to work, using bronze recovered from enemy war machines and designing ingenious support systems. He began a 12-year journey to create what many thought impossible. Construction of the Colossus of Rhodes took 12 years to build, starting from 292 BC to 280 BC. Unlike many ancient mysteries, there is little debate on how the Colossus of Rhodes was built. Most ancient accounts describe the statue as being primarily made of iron tie bars, with bronze plates fixed over to form the outer skin. The iron and bronze were reforged from the many weapons left behind by Demetrius's large army. and used for scaffolding around the lower levels during construction. The construction began from the feet and slowly rose upward. As the statue grew taller, workers built massive earthen ramps and wooden scaffolding to access higher sections. The interior of the statue, which stood on a 15-meter, higher 49-foot-high white marble pedestal, was filled with stone blocks as construction progressed. These massive stones acted as internal ballast, stabilizing the structure and giving it the weight needed to resist strong winds and shifting ground. Combined with a framework of iron tie bars and bronze plating, the stone-filled core was a clever solution, allowing the statue to rise over 100 feet tall without collapsing under its own weight. The iron skeleton provided the internal structure like bones, while the bronze plates formed the outer layer, giving the Colossus its human-like form and majestic shine. The internal framework was built using similar techniques used in the Statue of Liberty. Both structures relied on a strong internal skeleton to support a thin outer shell. The Statue of Liberty uses a similar concept to the Colossus of Rhodes. But instead of iron and bronze, the Statue of Liberty uses an iron and steel support system designed by Gustav Eiffel. With copper panels forming the surface, ancient or modern, the technique is the same. A lightweight exterior supported by a carefully engineered internal structure. It's a powerful reminder that some of the world's greatest ideas aren't new. They're timeless. The base pedestal of the statue was at least 18 meters or 59 feet in diameter. A massive platform strong enough to support over 100 feet of iron, bronze, and stone. Ancient accounts are torn between the base being a circular or octagonal shape. Some historians believe the circular design symbolized unity and perfection, hallmarks of Greek ideals. Others argue the octagonal shape offered more stability, especially against earthquakes. Whichever shape it was, the pedestal wasn't just a base, it was a marvel in its own right. Carved from white marble and possibly engraved with dedications, it elevated the Colossus both literally and symbolically. The Colossus of Rhodes was a masterpiece of ancient engineering, designed to endure the elements, gravity, and time itself. It all began at the feet, firmly anchored in stone. These feet were carved from solid blocks, then covered with thin bronze plates, carefully riveted together. 8 forged iron bars were set in a radiating horizontal pattern at the ankles, creating the internal structure that supported the statue's weight. These bars turned upward into the legs, becoming progressively smaller as they rose, like a skeletal spine for a god. The outer body was built with individually cast bronze plates, designed with precision. Each plate had holes formed during casting, allowing them to be joined with rivets in a ringed pattern, wrapping around the statue like armor. The thickness of each bronze plate depended on the anatomy it covered. Thinner plates were used on less stressed areas, but the thickest, most reinforced bronze was layered at the joints. Like the shoulders and neck, where structural strength was absolutely critical, the Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a statue, it was a living symbol carved in the image of Helios, a handsome and strong Greek god of the sun. He stood tall and proud, his lush, curly hair forged from bronze, catching the light like rays of the sun itself. His face was both mature and serene, embodying strength and wisdom. One of the Colossus's hands shielded his eyes from the horizon, watching over the sea. The other held a torch high above the harbor, a beacon of hope and vigilance. The Rhodians kindled this torch often, for it represented the ever-burning fire of their freedom, a light that could never be extinguished. It's one of the most iconic images from ancient history, a towering bronze giant standing with legs apart, straddling the entrance to the harbor of Rhodes as ships pass beneath. But did that really happen? The harbor-straddling Colossus was a figment of medieval imagination, a story told long after the statue had fallen. Not by eyewitnesses, but by dreamers. If the completed statue of Helios actually straddled the harbor, the entire mouth of the harbor would have been closed for over a decade during construction. And the Rhodians didn't have the technology to dredge or reopen a blocked harbor afterward. Ancient engineering simply couldn't support that kind of structure, especially one that needed to stand over open water. Also, it would be impossible to support the bronze statue straddling the harbor, as many engineering analyses point out. The bronze legs positioned at different ends of the harbor would have collapsed under their own weight. Bronze, while durable, isn't strong enough to act as a load-bearing material over long spans, especially without modern internal frameworks or suspension systems. And remember, the Greeks didn't have steel reinforcements or cranes like we do today. The distance between the harbor walls would have turned the statue into a self-destructing arch. The weight alone would cause the legs to buckle long before the torso was even in place. Additionally, after its collapse, the colossal statue would have fallen into the water and completely blocked the harbor. And here's the problem. It would have been impossible for the Rhodians to pull it up using the technology available at that time. Hundreds of tons of bronze and stone sinking into the sea. If that had happened, the harbor would have been shut down for years, maybe forever. And instead of lying broken on land for 800 years, the remains of the Colossus would be another Titanic beneath the sea, rusting in silence. But ancient accounts clearly describe its remains being visible and accessible in land for centuries. Proof that the real Colossus never stood over the harbor. While some ancient accounts place the statue near the Rhodes harbor entrance, other sources say the Colossus was on a breakwater inside the harbor itself. This confusion likely comes from how the statue's location was described in later centuries, often based on legend, not eyewitness accounts. Modern scholars have dismissed the myths, claiming the statue straddling the harbor mouth as implausible. Given the engineering limits of the time, to construct a statue of that size, with legs wide enough to span the harbor and strong enough to support the massive bronze body, would have been impossible with the materials and techniques available in 280 BC. Modern scholars suggest it stood proudly on a solid base just off to the side, or on a breakwater still close to the harbor. But not literally straddling its mouth as many myths suggest. Some believe the Colossus stood right near the water, close to where the modern-day fortress of St. Nicholas lies. According to this theory, the base of the Colossus was later reused to build the fortress itself, stone repurposed from god to guard tower. But not everyone agrees. Other accounts argue the Colossus was actually part of the Acropolis of Rhodes high above the city, standing on a hill overlooking the port. German archaeologist Ursula Vetter supports this view. She postulates that the base of the Acropolis itself served as the statue's platform, giving the statue a commanding view without ever standing in the harbor. The Colossus of Rhodes wasn't just a marvel of engineering or a symbol of victory, it was the beating heart of Rhodians' identity. Rhodes worshipped Helios, the sun god protector, provider, and patron of the island. When Rhodes emerged victorious from a siege in 305 BCE, its people wanted more than to just celebrate. They wanted to thank Helios, not with words, not with gold, but with something so immense, so radiant, that it would touch the skies like the god they worshipped. And so, they built the Colossus, a towering statue in the image of Helios himself. It stood as a symbol of gratitude, a sign that Rhodes walked in the grace of the sun. This spiritual beacon was noticed by the world. Pilgrims came from every corner of the ancient world not just to marvel, but to worship. The Colossus became a holy site, a place where offerings were made, prayers whispered, and the sun's power felt through Helios's towering form. In 226 BCE, disaster struck. A violent earthquake shook the island of Rhodes, toppling buildings, leveling marketplaces, and ripping apart the once bustling harbor. 54 years after its completion, the Colossus, this towering monument to Helios, snapped at the knees, came crashing down onto nearby land. But even in the aftermath, hope flickered. Ptolemy III, ruler of Egypt, offered the generous gift of funding the Colossus's reconstruction, but the Rhodians refused. The Oracle of Delphi, the sacred voice of the gods, delivered a chilling warning. Do not rebuild. Helios is angry. The fall of the Colossus was not a disaster. It was a judgment. To defy the will of Helios was to risk further wrath. And so the Colossus was never rebuilt. Even if it had been rebuilt, it never would have survived. Rhodes lies in one of the most seismically unstable regions in the Mediterranean. The island experienced 2 major earthquakes every century, a cycle of destruction that no statue, no matter how divine, could outlast, especially a 33-meter-tall giant of bronze and iron. Repairing it over and over again with the tools of the ancient world would have been impossible. It would be too costly, too complex, and too dangerous. And as centuries passed, something else changed. Rhodes was Christianized. By the 4th century CE, worship of Helios had vanished. The gods of Olympus were gone, replaced by crosses and cathedrals. What was left of the Colossus's massive bronze limbs and iron supports were likely melted down, repurposed for church tools, coins, and the machinery of a new faith. And yet, even in its ruins, the Colossus endured. For over 800 years, its broken body lay on the ground, twisted metal, massive limbs. Still so awe-inspiring, travelers came from across the world just to see it. Over the years, several modern architects, dreamers, even governments, have proposed building a new Colossus of Rhodes as a monument to unity, peace, and heritage. Some designs imagined a high-tech, solar-powered Helios, complete with an observation deck. Others envisioned a global collaboration, an international symbol rising from the ancient port once more. To build something of that scale, using modern materials, safely, in a seismically active region, we're talking hundreds of millions of dollars so far. Every proposal has collapsed under its own weight. In 2008, German artist Gert Hoff proposed a bold to rebuild the Colossus of Rhodes using melted-down weapons from around the world. The project's budget ballooned to nearly $200 million. Logistically and politically, it was a mountain too steep. And so, the dream was scrapped. In December 2015, it almost happened. A group of European architects revealed an audacious plan to build a modern Colossus. 150 meters tall, that's nearly 500 feet, standing with 1 foot on each pier of Rhodes' ancient harbor, it would have been more than twice the height of the original. Not just a statue, but a multi-level structure with a museum, cultural center, and observation deck inside. The team planned to cover the staggering $283 million cost through crowdsourcing and private donors. Despite global attention, the project struggled to raise the funds, and in the end, that dream stayed on paper. Even if these projects never took place, the closest modern statue to the Colossus of Rhodes is the Statue of Liberty, both using similar architectural and engineering techniques. Many modern media is also influenced by the Colossus of Rhodes. In the popular HBO show Game of Thrones, the Titan of Braavos stands as the Colossus of that universe. The Colossus continues to inspire architects, artists, and storytellers across the world. The Colossus of Rhodes may have stood for only 54 years, but its legend has lasted over 2 millennia. It was a statement of faith, of pride, of human ambition touching the divine. If you've been enjoying these history videos, please don't forget to give us a thumbs up and subscribe. By doing so, you'll not only stay updated on all the latest adventures, but you'll also be showing your support. This channel's got all sorts of exciting content planned for the future, and can't wait to share it with you. Thanks for coming along on this journey through history. Catch you next time.